Nice.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another Backlot Banter movie review. My name is Tucker Hazel and I am here joined today by a man who has tried to kill me many times, Tanner Dykstra, and today we're here to talk about David Leitch's new movie, Bullet Train, starring a lot of wacky characters. But if you want to talk to us about Bullet Train, you can join our Discord. That link is in the top of the description. And while you're down there, you can like this video, you can subscribe to the channel, and you can ring that wacky bell, which will let you know every time we do one of these reviews. And whoo boy howdy, August is stacked. There's going to be a lot of reviews, and you are going to not want to miss a single one of them. But there, we both got a chance to see early access Bullet Train. Not that we actually got invited to anything. It's just, there's something they're doing 2 days early for whatever reason.
Premium large format early screening.
Exactly. But what are your first thoughts on Bullet Train?
Tucker, my first thoughts on Bullet Train are I'm not gonna like this movie as much as other people. Unfortunately, a lot of people in the theater were having fun. Yourself included, I believe. Our friends
I wasn't there,
included.
but...
Yeah, Tucker was not there, but separately, I believe he was having fun in that theater. I thought Bullet Train was, I thought it was all right, frankly. But I think it's nothing of the fault of the movie. It's on its own. I think it's more that I'm just growing weary of these like zany, high octane, sort of smug, ironic action movies. These like things that have really come, post Deadpool essentially.
Sure.
Funny
Yeah.
enough, David Leitch directing this.
Yes.
But this, honestly, there's a lot to like about this movie. Obviously, the cast is a huge benefit. Getting Brad Pitt as your main star is going to be a great hook for a lot of people going into this. He's good in this movie. And the jokes are the jokes for me are about 50-50, maybe a little higher average than that for what's hitting and what's not. But I'm going to try to remain positive in this review. And I want to hear what you have to say about Bullet Train.
Well, you can try to remain positive, but I'm gonna be positive because I thought this movie greatly surpassed my expectations. I expected crazy acting, I expected a good ensemble cast, definitely got that. But what blew me away with this movie, and why I'm certainly coming out of it much hotter than I expected to be, is that I thought this movie's screenplay was really fantastic. The amount of setups and payoffs and intertwining backstories and characters that are introduced later on, everything fits together like a puzzle in a really compelling way, and that's what I love about certain movies that go for this kind of writing style. And on top of that, I thought that the action and comedy and how that all intertwined was very, very, very well done. I will say that it is not a 4.5 or 5-star movie for me because I do think this movie is too long. I think it has like 3 or 4 moments that feel like they could be an ending, and you keep adding another scene and keep going. And also, holy crap, is this movie too loud? I don't know what's going on with the sound mixing, but there are often times where music is cranked up to 12.
Yeah.
Knock it down a few notches.
Yeah.
I want to be able to hear these people with thick British or Japanese accents. And sometimes it does not come through. But on the whole, I think this is a absolutely fantastic movie, and another example of why I think 2022 might be quietly one of the greatest years in action cinema.
Sure.
Where do you want to start with more discussion about this film?
Let's start with the cast. I mean, the cast is obviously the biggest draw. That is what they are forefronting on the poster for this film.
Yeah.
I mean, you have your main players. You got Brad Pitt. You got Aaron Taylor Johnson. You got Brian Tyree Henry. You got people like Joey King. You got you got some other players like Bad Bunny. You got some other players like Zazie Beetz. You got some other players like I don't know, Tucker. Who else is in this movie? Who else haven't I named yet?
Well, I think the interesting thing is there's a lot of people in this movie that they didn't show in the trailers. I was aware that Sandra Bullock was in it, and aware that there was a few other people in it. But I didn't look at the cast, so there was a number of times throughout this movie where I was surprised by a cameo, because this movie is chock full of cameos and taking off the mask, holy crap, it's that actor moments. So I would say don't look at the cast if you haven't already. Go in as blind as possible and have fun when someone shows up and they just kill a few minutes later, but it's a famous actor, so that's kind of fun.
Yes.
But I think that the cast is definitely one of the strong aspects of this film, not necessarily because everyone's turning in their greatest performances, though I do think they're great across the board. It's not top tier acting stuff, but the way that they're balanced, I think, is the most impressive thing. Is no character is left for too long. I think maybe a couple of sections were like, oh, what's Joey King's character up to? Like, oh, where's the other Japanese man that she's working with alongside in this movie? But on the whole, you're cutting back between each of these scenes with these characters, and they come and they go, and everyone's always in place at the wrong time in this movie. And I think that that's why I enjoyed the cast so much. Brad Pitt is our lead, But in terms of screen time, he really isn't. I mean, everyone has a very equal amount of screen time in this movie, and it leads to a lot of variety in action set pieces as you can jump out of the train and zoom back in another car, and you're doing a whole new set of characters, and you have to pick up on their plots again and realize how everything is folding together, and it certainly keeps it really, really kinetic and engaging.
Yeah, I would say that's probably when the movie is at its best, is when it's playing with the full chessboard, when it's moving pieces around. Very good looking pieces, I might add. Aaron Taylor Johnson was especially some eye candy for me personally in this movie.
He's rocking your stash.
He's rocking the stash, which I can appreciate. It's coming back in a big way. I like to think that I started the trend, but that's besides the point. The movie is at its best when it's moving a lot of these chess pieces around. It does have quite a few pieces to play with.
Yes.
One thing that I would say that I'm not particularly fond of in this film is, as you said, there's a lot of setup and payoff. There's a lot of MacGuffins. There's a lot of characters who have, maybe ulterior motives and stuff like that.
Lots of ulterior motives.
And what the film feels a need to do with those things is, when that thing is being revealed or when it is being talked about or discussed, it'll show you it. It'll hey, you remember the snake that they're talking about? It's this snake. You remember this snake? I'm like, yeah, it was the only snake in the movie. And you showed me it at the beginning on the newscast, and I don't really need you to show me the newscast again. I remember the snake, or I remember the Thomas the Tank Engine, or I remember when this character was brought up. I don't need you to, take me out of it and show me this again.
Sure, I think that's definitely something that I noticed. I was like, they're showing instead of not telling, or whatever. You know the saying. Yeah. They're doing
telling and
bad
showing
version
at the same time. Yeah,
exactly. But I do think a number of those moments ended up actually working in favor of a reveal or something that connected to another character that had not been revealed before. So I think that they were used smartly, and also I do think that this is a film that's intended to appeal to a really wide audience, and in a movie that is as busy with plot lines and characters as this film is, I think that it's pretty reasonable to cut to a shot that you saw earlier to remind you what's going on, and they don't linger on it for the most part. So those
it's
are
very
always
quick. It just happens quite a few times.
Yeah, they're blink and you miss it moments, but you'd have to be blinking a lot in this movie to miss all of them. But I do think that setup and payoff is the thing I was most impressed by with this film, or surprised by at least. But the thing I was not surprised by, because I expected it to be great, is the action. And I think this is where this movie really shines in creative choreography that really uses this bullet train with all its different cars and the different aesthetics of different cars to their fullest potential. You're always hopping between the cars, using whatever's around you, including seats, including drawers, including baggage, to fight their opponents, and it's always, you're never in one place for too long, and I always think that momentum keeps it really fresh.
Yeah, I would say, another great benefit to this film in terms of action is, and this is a character element as well for Brad Pitt, not a lot of gunplay going on here. They are using pieces of luggage and bottles and stuff from like the catering train and stuff. Limited gunplay, which I can appreciate. And, it allows our actors to be a little bit more physical, explore the space a little bit more than they would if they were just at opposite ends of the train car firing at each other. Of course, that ultimately does come around, and as indicated by some moments in the trailer, there is a CGI clusterfuck of a train crash going on towards the end of the film. But by and large, I didn't have any issues with the action at all.
Yeah, I think the action is the action works as well as it does because I was invested in all these characters by their performances and their writing. I think that each character, no matter how long they stay around for, which greatly varies over the course of the film, are written in an interesting way, and I don't think any character is really left out. There are a huge amount of named characters that get their splash card with this is the title of this character, and all of them get a backstory. They get a reason why they're on this train, and all of those come together in interesting ways as you meet the main villain nearing the end, and everything is sort of revealed that there was this plot going on. And I think that knowing their backstories and getting to know them before they get into the action definitely helped me want to keep up with all of these characters, because there are so many of them. But I was excited to move from one to the other, because I'm like, oh, I remember who this guy is, I remember why he's in this situation, I remember what he did the scene before last. And even though there was so much, I felt like they balanced it and kept me really interested because the characters were so interestingly written.
The other big aspect of this movie, it is a action comedy, is the comedy, funny enough. And Here's where kind of my thing comes in, where I said, I'm maybe growing a bit weary of these kind of movies, this Deadpool brand. And that being said, I think it works fine for Deadpool because that is the pre-established sort of style of that character. But when we're carrying it into, other action movies, like I said, it's about 50-50, maybe 60-40 for me. I was laughing at a number of things, but at the same time, there was quite a few, like, shitballs, hey, fuck nuggets, what's going on? Stuff like that, where I'm like, I've heard these jokes, like, half a dozen times in half a dozen movies before. I get it,
Yeah, I thought the comedy worked because it felt like the tone that this movie was establishing. There was no time where they were easing off of it. It was very consistent throughout, though I will admit there were some times where the humor was drawn out, and they had a joke, and they kept teasing it in a circle a couple more times than they probably should have, which definitely led to some moments that could have felt kinetic and moving on to something else to be drawn out a little longer than I would have wanted, and I think that plays into my issue that I talked about earlier, where I do think this film is too long. I think if you cut out 15 to 18, 20 minutes out of it, you have a movie that not only moves a lot faster, but doesn't feel like this could have been the end, and we're just adding more and more and more. And I do think that it escalates in compelling ways. I think that every plot point and character feels necessary. There's not anything that feels extraneous, and I wouldn't necessarily know what to cut, but I think something could have been cut, and that would have led to this film being over with before I even noticed. But I definitely felt the runtime nearing the end, which was a little bit unfortunate.
Like I said, I don't want to harp too much on the comedy because I think Brad Pitt is, really coming into his own as this, like, comedic action star in this later stage of his acting career, which is really interesting, and he does a good job as, like, our zen snatch and grab sort of accidentally turned assassin in this movie, who's, like, trying to come to terms with his criminal life and stuff like that, and trying to, like, pause fight scenes in the middle of them. He's like, hey, can't we just talk this out? And him and there's a particular scene between him and Aaron Taylor Johnson, two very handsome men. They have a continued sort of comedic scenes throughout this movie, all of which I think are great, as well as Brian Tyree Henry.
Yes,
honestly, I think those three are really the highlights of this movie for me. They are probably the three big stars of it, I would say, as well. Maybe Joey King's in there as well.
There's a few other ones.
There's a few other ones. The three leads, maybe.
Yes,
it would be more
definitely,
accurate.
definitely.
But yeah, I think for the most part, I liked them.
I think that cast brings me to the end of what I was saying is great cast, great characters that they're playing, put into interesting scenarios that are played with in very interesting ways, and it does escalate and connect back to itself in interesting ways, and that's why, for me, this movie is getting very high marks. It's going to get an 8.7 for me.
Fate is leading me, Tucker. This movie's all about fate, and maybe going where fate leads you. Fate is leading me to lean a little bit more positive on this review. So I'm gonna give this a 7.3. How about that? And I guess my final note would just be if we're going into this movie, if you are interested, go see it, of course, and maybe don't get too attached to some people you see on the poster, and be ready for a few surprises as well.
Absolutely. And with that, we will see you guys in more movie reviews coming very soon.
Bat Hunter extraordinaire over here.
What'd you do?
I hit it with a broom.